The Canyon Lux Trail first arrived in 2021 as a longer travel version of the Lux race bike. Canyon achieved this by pairing the same rear end to a unique front triangle which featured a much longer reach and a slacker head angle. I spent a load of time on the previous Lux Trail and found it to be a really fun and fast XC bike. But while it was more versatile than the regular Lux, it certainly wasn't perfect. The seat angle was a bit too slack, the stem was too long, and the suspension felt a bit mismatched with quite a firm feeling rear end. It would appear that Canyon has taken that feedback on board, and here we have the second generation Lux Trail. It features a brand new frame, a revised suspension layout with more travel, and in a first for a Canyon mountain bike, internal storage. To see what all those changes bring to the riding experience, we got our hands on the new Lux Trail to put to the test. The Canyon Lux Trail is a contemporary all-round XC bike that's designed to compete with the likes of the specialised Epic Evo, the Orbea Oise, the Scott Spark and the Cervelo ZFS5. The full carbon frame is all new for 2024 and it's now offered in both CF and CFR versions. Both share the same physical shape and geometry, but the CFR frame features higher modulus fibres in order to reduce weight. Up front we've got a 120mm travel fork, and out back, rear travel is increased by 5mm, that's now 115mm. It still features a single pivot suspension platform, but the linkage has been totally redesigned. The rocker link now hangs from the top tube, while the shock is driven by a small yoke. The new design is claimed to provide greater small bump sensitivity and a smoother feel all the way through the travel. Maintaining the Lux Trail's go-fast intentions, both the shock and the fork are linked up to a 3-position remote at the handlebar, and that allows you to cycle between the open, medium and lock settings on the fly. One of the bigger talking points about the new Canyon Lux Trail is its internal storage. Unlike the Grail gravel bike, there's now a small hatch located just above the main bottle. The opening is on the smaller side compared to what you'd find on a Specialized or a Trek, so you're unlikely to fit in bulkier items like a pump. However, a CO2 holster is cleverly integrated into the underside of the hatch, and Canyon has designed a storage pouch which will hold a tube, tyre levers, tubeless plugs and other small tools. There's even a dedicated mount underneath the top tube for a small multi-tool. It's all very neat and well thought out, which makes it a bit of a bummer that these accessories aren't included with the bike. If you like the look of them, you'll need to purchase them separately. Also of note is that Canyon has added an extra small size to the range, making it 5 sizes in total. As for the geometry, there have been some minor updates. And since the old Lux Trail was already quite long and slack, the reach stays the same on our medium-sized test bike that comes in at 460mm. The head angle gets half a degree slacker, that's now 67 degrees. A more significant change occurs at the seat tube angle, which steepens by 1.5 degrees, that's now 76 degrees. Canyon has also shortened the stem length from 70 to 50mm, and combined with a steeper seat tube angle, that makes for a more comfortable riding position. For 2024, Canyon has expanded the Lux Trail lineup to 6 models, with prices starting at a bit over $5,000. The bike that I've been testing sits one step down from the top. This is the Canyon Lux Trail CFR, and the current retail price on this is $10,599 plus shipping. It comes with a Fox 34 step cast fork and a float SL shock. We've got a Transfer SL dropper post and Canyon's one-piece carbon cockpit. There's a Shimano XTR group set, DT Swiss XRC 1200 wheels and Schwalbe tyres with a 2.4 Wicked Wheel on the front and a 2.35 Racing Ralph on the rear. Confirmed weight for our Canyon Lux Trail CFR test bike is 11.28 kilos, which is pretty good for a bike with this amount of travel. It's worth noting that the CFR frame isn't overly light, coming in at a claimed weight of 2.3 kilos including the shock. To put that figure into perspective, that's around 400 grams heavier than an equivalent Lux World Cup frame. Speaking of, if you're curious to know how the Lux Trail compares to the Lux World Cup, I've put a detailed comparison in the full review over at flowmountainbike.com. In there you'll find more information about sizing and suspension setup and how the Lux Trail compares to some of the competition. If you're keen to check it out, just click the link in the video description below. Once onto dirt, it's clear that the new Canyon Lux Trail is a more cohesive bike than its predecessor. The rear suspension is much more sensitive, offering a far better balance with the excellent Fox 34 step cast up front. The back end delivers greater comfort and grip with a much smoother feel throughout the travel. It's not quite as plush as the Cervelo or the Scott, though it does feel more supple than the Oise. Combined with the new Float SL shock, there's a good amount of support through the mid-stroke, and big hits are dealt with calmly and comfortably. Indeed, I'm yet to encounter any harsh bottom outs despite being able to use full travel when needed. The improved suspension performance contributes greatly to the Lux Trail's ability to handle rougher trails. Combined with the longer wheelbase, it offers terrific stability at speed on challenging terrain, giving it a much more planted feel compared to a traditional XC race bike. It's worth noting that the Lux Trail is still a very flickable bike on tight single track. The low weight, the stiff carbon frame and taut wheel set contribute a lot to its responsive handling, with the short stem giving the front end steering a light and whippy feel. When riding flatter trails with the saddle at full mast, the riding position naturally pushes your weight low and forward. Combined with a stiff one-piece cockpit, steering is very precise and direct, allowing you to slice up corners with gusto. This is matched well by the fast-rolling tyres and the efficient pedalling performance. Canyon claims the anti-squat sits at 114% at sag, and that sees the rear shock stiffening up under pedalling inputs, propelling you forward with minimal energy loss. In fact, the rear end is so efficient that I rarely found any need to use the remote lever. The middle position does firm up the shock's compression damping, which elevates the dynamic ride height, and that can be useful on smoother and longer climbs, and of course you've got access to a full lockout when needed. On that last point, as I found with the previous Lux Trail, I'd be totally happy to race this bike. It's certainly light and efficient enough, and all you'd really need would be a faster rolling front tyre for smoother courses. And the ability to carry 2 bottles and loads of spares makes it well suited to marathon and multi-day stage races. And while the new Canyon Lux Trail is no doubt smoother and better balanced than the original, it's important to note that it still sits on the racier side of the spectrum. That isn't necessarily a problem, it just depends on your expectations. The stiff carbon frame, wheels and one-piece cockpit are a big part of the Lux Trail's responsive handling, but they also tend to transmit some feedback on rockier terrain. Bigger impacts are dealt with beautifully by the suspension, and the supple tyres do a great job of absorbing general trail chatter. It's the smaller high-frequency buzz that isn't as well damped, and that's compounded by some feedback through the drivetrain on square edge hits. Now, I found this to be noticeable compared to the Cervelo ZFS5, which is a bike I've been spending a lot of time on lately. That bike has the same amount of travel and similar geometry to the Lux Trail, but it's more compliant on rockier terrain thanks to its slender chassis and more neutral suspension behaviour. The Lux Trail is also a bit more demanding in terms of its steering dynamic. The long reach sees the front wheel sticking a good way out ahead of you, and that means it needs to be weighted accordingly to keep the tyre driving into the ground. If you're a bit nervous and sitting off the back of the bike when descending into a corner, understeer can become an issue. I soon got used to the riding position and weight distribution after the first couple of rides, and I found myself being able to ride faster and harder as I built more trust in the front end. Overall though, this really is a bike that wants to be ridden assertively to get the best out of it. While certainly not cheap, there's no denying that the Canyon Lux Trail CFR delivers an impressively premium package for the money. The XTR group set is fantastic, offering crisp shifting under load and smooth braking performance. The Fox Factory Series suspension is excellent, and particularly that new Float SL shock. I don't love the Fox remote though, which features short plastic levers that don't give you a lot of leverage over the 2 cables. The action is quite stiff and vague, especially when you're trying to activate the middle position, and overall it's just less ergonomic compared to the squid lock remote on the Orbea Ois. Then again, if this were my bike, I'd just remove the remote entirely. The Lux Trail is plenty efficient as it is, and the busy cockpit could certainly do with 2 less cables. Doing that would also allow you to fit an under-the-bar dropper lever. Speaking of the dropper, the Transfer SL offers an impressively light action, but its 2-position function means it's either at full extension or full compression. You can't lower it slightly on a technical climb, which is kind of annoying given how good of a climber the Lux Trail is. It also means you've got a decent squat to compress the saddle all the way until it locks in position, and that can be quite fatiguing over a longer undulating ride. It's certainly not ideal for cross-country racing, to the point where I'd be swapping it out for a shorter dropper or something with infinite travel adjust. And lastly, while I've not had any issues with the headset itself, the fact that 3 cables and a brake hose pass through it does add some complication to routine maintenance. This is, after all, a bike that's going to be seeing a lot of miles, and for some owners, that will mean frequent cable replacements in order to keep everything running in tip-top condition. With that in mind, the SRAM models, which feature a wireless derailleur and dropper post, certainly become a more tempting proposition. As for our verdict on the 2024 Canyon Lux Trail, or with this 2nd generation platform, platform, Canyon has built on the strengths of the original while bringing about some welcome refinements. The rear suspension is radically improved, boasting greater small bump sensitivity with a plusher and deeper feel all the way through the travel. It offers better comfort and balance all round while maintaining the efficient pedaling performance and responsive handling of its predecessor. It's lightweight, fast and sprightly, making it a great choice for the XC rider who's looking to mix it up between some racing, long-distance trail riding and multi-day adventures. Now, if you've got any questions for us about the new Canyon Lux Trail, make sure you drop those into the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, give us a thumbs up and we'll see you next time. Tooroo!